Victoria Vanstone, welcome to my podcast.
Hi, thanks so much for having me on.
This is Victoria Vanstone from the Sober Awkward podcast in Australia. Also, recently an author, 1,000 Wasted Sundays.
Yeah.
And an international sex machine.
Oh, yeah, apparently. I'm not sure my husband would like it if you called me that.
How are you? You good?
Yeah, I'm good. We had a bit of a dodgy flight coming into Auckland this morning, which added to the excitement. There were lots of delays, but we're really pleased to be here. It's very cold compared to the tropics where I've come from, but we're excited to be here.
Yeah, where are you? Like northern Queensland?
Yeah, Sunshine Coast. No, just up from Brisbane, yeah.
Yeah, it's beautiful up there.
Yeah, it's lovely. I mean, it's hot. It's 25 degrees there when I left. So, yeah, this is very different. There was hailstorms and rain as we arrived, so we were like, it was like being back in Blighty, quite honestly.
Yeah, it's a shitter of a day for you to land, and you were telling me the plane had 4 attempts at landing.
Yeah, so a bit scary. Actually, the girl next to me was vomiting. So that was nice. Yeah. Nice welcome to New Zealand.
Although, you know, let's not be too judgmental. You've done a fair bit of vomiting in your life.
I have done a lot of vomiting. That is fair to say.
Yeah, we'll get into that. Hey, first of all, congratulations. Recently you were named Best Wellbeing Podcast at the Australian Podcast Awards.
Yeah, it was incredible.
Yeah.
We couldn't believe it when our name was called out, quite honestly. What a treat. We went down to Sydney for the event and it was just wonderful to be involved and meet some fantastic other podcasters, because often in this game, as you'd know, it's quite isolating. Like you go into your studio, you record, you occasionally meet other people, but you never really know that what you're saying has impact. So it was lovely to meet some people who listen to the podcast and also all the people that make podcasts. It was a fabulous night.
Yeah, it's a huge honour as well, I think, for a small sort of independent, you know, done in your home studio podcast to get that acknowledgement. What does so you say there's like an award ceremony? What does like an award ceremony night like that look like for you guys now? How do you celebrate?
Well, it's difficult. We went out for cake afterwards. Everyone was absolutely plastered at the do because it was free booze, of course it was. So we just afterwards watched trays of sparkling wine and champagne just kind of skim underneath our noses, which was very annoying because they were bringing us like massive kind of pint glasses of apple juice, like child drinks. And we were like, oh God. And then as the night deteriorated, everyone got a bit close and a bit spitty. So we left and found a hotel and had a bit of chocolate cake each.
Yeah.
That's how we celebrate nowadays.
It's a funny thing, isn't it? What's your relationship like with alcohol-free drinks?
Yeah, I'll have one.
Yeah.
It's not a sustainable business, I think, the alcohol-free industry, just because you only have one. Of course, alcohol companies are designed for you to want more. Yeah, so it's different.
Yeah, whenever I'm doing, I do love my wines. I love Pinot Noirs, but I did Dry July last year, and then I listened to a podcast with Andrew Huberman.
Yes, of course.
Since then, I have reevaluated my relationship with alcohol, and I do keep a close eye on it.
Great.
If I'm being completely honest, I'm probably still in that phase now where I'm trying to coexist with it, and before I'll eventually get to the point where I give up and go, no, I just can't be trusted.
Wow, it's fascinating. Everybody has their own very, very intricate relationship with alcohol, I find. Everybody's got a story.
Well, some people seem to just not even sort of think about it. It's not really a thing. And
yeah,
that's fine.
who are these people? I never met them in the dodgy nightclub that I was passed out on the floor in, I can tell you that. There are these weird unicorn people who have never even touched a drop. I always say when I do meet them, like, you are incredible, because the power that it takes throughout your life, especially at the ages of 13 and 14, what an incredible superpower to have to say no at that age. I always find it fascinating when people have never drunk.
Mm. I feel like it's probably easier now than what it's ever been, to say no. And
definitely.
And have people accept your choice.
Yeah, everything's changing. It does feel like we're on the crest of a wave with this. People are starting to change their attitudes. You're not getting hassled every time you go out. You're not getting, tapped on the shoulder and someone saying, come on, mate, just have one. It doesn't happen that often. People respect choice because we're so aware of the impact on mental health.
Yeah. And we'll get into that with you because, had a massive impact on your mental health, didn't it?
Yeah,
and
massive.
Anxiety and stuff.
Yeah.
First of all, what does the term sober awkward mean to you, and how did you come up with that name?
Yeah, so when you first get sober, which hopefully you'll find out one day, it's very, very awkward because people know you as this one person, this party animal, this reliable social, soul, and then you become someone else. And somebody that you're happy with, but perhaps other people aren't. And that can be really, really confronting for people. So going into social life again is really, really awkward. I often refer to it as there suddenly being a bright light, like these lights that are on us here. You go into a pub for the first time ever without your crutch and you feel totally overexposed. You feel like you can see and hear everything for the first time. And it's like this bright light is shining on everything that comes out of your mouth and every move you make. And it is really, really uncomfortable. So me and my friend Lucy, who I started the podcast with, we were like, what should we call this? How does it really feel to get sober? And we weren't going to be all airy-fairy about it and be like, look, this is going to be the easiest thing in the world, because it's actually not. It is not an easy choice to make. And it is extremely difficult to continue the same sort of social life that you've had before, which makes it very awkward. So we're like, oh, yeah, it's got to be sober awkward.
Yeah, I love it. And it works so well. If you had to do like a pie diagram of who your listeners are, who would they be? Like, how many drinkers are there? How many sober curious people are there? How many reformed drinkers are there?
Our biggest download day is New Year's Day. So that day, it's definitely the drinkers because they're hungover. They're hungover in bed going, why am I doing this again? I feel like I never want to drink again, and where do I start? But generally, it's women. I would say 70% women in their 40s, especially women who have just had children. And with Hamish coming on board, that has opened up a whole new area of men to look at their drinking habits. Hamish has come on board a year or 2 years ago now as somebody who never had a problem with alcohol. So he's opened this massive funnel saying, look, I'm giving up alcohol. I didn't have an issue with it, yet I know that it's bad for me and this is what's going to happen. So we've tracked his journey along with mine to say, look, you can still give up drinking without a problem. That's kind of our message, is that it doesn't have to get to these lows or actually these massive highs for you to be able to quit.
Yeah, he's very funny, isn't he? He's
very funny.
A new dimension to the podcast.
He's not as funny as me.
No, of course not. Sounds a bit like Stewie from Family Guy.
Yeah, he does a bit, yeah.
Yeah. So I listened to the latest episode, which was called Time.
Oh, yes.
On my run this morning. Like, what's the preparation procedure? So you come up with like a general theme of each?
We try to keep it related to booze, but sometimes we go off track. You know, we talk about the impact that alcohol has on domestic violence, and we talk about dopamine hits, and we talk about mental health and all sorts of things that affect us in our daily sober lives. Time was a massive one because we have lost so much time throughout our lives, and we gain so much time when we become sober, and we have to fill that space where booze used to reside. So Hamish writes one a week, I write one a week, and we take turns in coming up with topics.
Yeah, obviously you want to keep it going because it's an incredibly successful podcast. Will you ever run out of themes or things to talk about?
We did wonder that, but we always seem to find something. I've got my little notes in my phone. I always, every day, come up with a topic. And we've had a few guests on. We weren't doing that originally, but we had Fatboy Slim as our first guest, and we've had some incredible guests over the last year. So that makes it a lot easier when you're having someone else's story in there. But generally, it's just me and Hamish waffling on about sober life.
Amazing. Yeah, your Fatboy Slim, Norman Cook, what's his journey? What's his sobriety?
14 years sober. Right. That was an old mate of mine, really. I couldn't say I was friends with him, but I used to go to where he DJ'd in Brighton at the Big Beat Boutique every Friday night. And that was a real sort of full circle moment having him as our first guest on the podcast. We've still got a few mates in common. I think that's how this rolls, really, isn't it? It's who you know. So I nudged a few old mates in Brighton and managed to get him on. We went to his gig in Brisbane and interviewed him before the show, and it was so good. We were literally like gurning in the audience. Like, it was just the most fantastic night, and we kind of stompy danced away for the evening and then went and met him afterwards. He was absolutely lovely bloke.
Did he praise you like he should?
Yeah, he did praise me like he should have done.
Oh God, that's low-hanging fruit. I'm so sorry.
No, it's good. That's what we like.
So 20-year-old Vic, who I've read about in your book, what would she make of this version of you? Would she think you're a boring old...
Probably.
Yeah.
She would think I'm very boring, but I think she wouldn't even know who it was. It's a completely different person. I feel like I've had two lives, which is why I'm very happy to talk about everything, because it's easy for me to divide these two people. I can look back and go, well, that person was somebody who was quite unwell, and now I'm somebody that's not. So it makes it a lot easier for me to discuss everything that I've been through, because I see the damage and what was going on. It's very clear that I wasn't happy and that I was trying to be, and I didn't have any tools back then. Whereas now I've got the tools to continue on kind of an upward trajectory.
Yeah, and what would you like to go back and tell 20-year-old Vic? Not that she'd listen, she'd probably tell you to fuck off, but...
I would just like to tell her that being her is okay. Like, being you is enough, because I forgot somewhere along the line that I mattered and that how I felt. I became such a people pleaser throughout my life that I sort of abandoned my own personality to be the entertainer for everybody else. I think it's a very common thing to do in your social life, is to change a little bit to appease the opinions of others. And I definitely did that probably a lot more than anyone else. So I would tell her, just, be yourself. Calm the fuck down.
Yeah. She did sound like a fun girl.
She was pretty fun. That's the problem, though. Everyone else was guaranteed a night out, like a brilliant laugh and a story at the pub the next day.
Yeah.
But for me, I kind of laughed along with it, whereas in fact I should have, bared witness to those red flags that were whipping me across the face all my life.
Yeah, so some of the stuff in your book, for a girl in her 20s or even early 30s, it's kind of fun, and it's good souvenirs and memories. But if you're still that person in your 40s or 50s, it's just fucking sad.
Yeah, it's not a good look. Yeah.
No, it's tragic.
Yeah. But I guess sometimes with booze especially, it's such an acceptable culture that we just go along with it. And my personality, my whole identity revolved around me being this party animal. So I never looked outside it. I didn't have reason to until I had kids. Yeah.
Were you an alcoholic?
Do you know what? It's a very difficult question. I guess people who have been in recovery for a long time would say anyone that has a problem and has struggled with their intake of alcohol is an alcoholic. But for me, I don't want to label myself. I feel like you can call me what you want, honestly. I don't really care. But I was somebody who had mental health issues, I think. And I was somebody that was drowning out my problems. I prefer to be called sober. I think the word alcoholic and even the word anonymous, even though AA does work, I do find those terms a little bit archaic now, because I don't have any shame about my behaviour. It was booze doing what booze did. So being alcoholic or anonymous, it conjures up the wrong image of who I am. I wasn't passed out. I'm going to say I wasn't passed out in my own vomit, but actually I was quite often.
It seems like
most
you
Friday
were on many occasions.
I was probably an alcoholic, but I think it conjures up the wrong image of actually who I was and who I am.
Yeah.
It's not as simple as that. It's not as simple as saying you are this and you are that, and that puts you in the box. There was so much more to it than just that word.
Yeah, also, I think part of the... I don't know, I'm probably speaking out of a hole in my ass here, but I think part of the problem with the term alcoholic is if you say to anyone, I think I've got a drinking problem, the first thing they'll say likely is like, well, you don't have the shakes in the morning, you're not hiding wine in a coffee cup.
Yep.
There's this sort of absolute ground zero level of what an alcoholic looks like.
Totally,
it's really someone sleeping on the street. So anything beyond that is considered almost acceptable. Which
is exactly why people don't reach out for professional support, because they don't feel worthy of help, because they're, well, I'm not Jack down the pub who has 15 pints of Stella on a Friday night. I'm not passed out on the park bench with a bottle of Jack Daniels clenched to my chest. I'm just a normal drinker. And I consider myself I was a normal drinker. The people that I surrounded myself with were doing exactly the same thing. So how do you look out of a problem if it's everywhere? It was kind of, absorbed into the people I surrounded myself with, and I drowned it out. I drowned it out with my environments. Yeah. And it was almost clever because no one picked me out of the crowd and said, "Oi, mate, you've got a problem."
Yeah.
Yeah.
So March 10, 2018. How did that day look?
That was a long time coming, that day, I would say.
Like a couple of decades?
Yeah,
coming?
About 25 years, I would say.
Like, why are we so slow at learning, eh?
Wow, we are slow at learning. That is my biggest regret, is how slow I was at coming round to the fact that perhaps drinking wasn't good for me.
Was part of it as well that you had a good time and it was just starting to get boring? Like it wasn't fun anymore?
No, it definitely wasn't fun anymore. And I started to get a little bit of anxiety, which I had from my recreational drug use in the early 90s. I had an ecstasy overdose. And then it started to creep back into my hangovers after having my first child. It sounds terrible, but I was continuing to binge drink at the weekends with my new mother's group after having my first child. And I was having repercussions, a consequence to my drinking for the first time ever, which was a crying newborn in my arms. There's nothing more impactful than that. But of course I didn't stop because I couldn't look outside of it. I wasn't drinking every day. I probably drank once a week perhaps, but always to a toxic level, I would say, always kind of running to the toilet to vomit the next day, and really the drunkest person at any kind of nightclub or bar or wake or whatever it was. I had to address it after having my second child when I was near to that date that you mentioned. I had a baby, I had another 9 months of sobriety, like this beautiful window into another life where I didn't have to make excuses for not drinking. And I was trying to do better. I thought, I've got to do better than this. And I went out 6 weeks after she was born, the mundanity of becoming a new mum. You know, I'd been travelling the world for years, and suddenly I was in a bloody apartment with beige wallpaper doing the washing every day, which is real, you know, that's a massive transformation from who I once was. And I was bored out of my brain, quite honestly. Motherhood can be boring as fuck sometimes. And yeah, I went out and got massively pissed after the 6 weeks after she was born, and woke up in the morning with another massive hangover and this awful fear monster sort of tapping me on the shoulder saying, I'm still here, I'm not going away, you need to do something about this. So my anxiety ended up being the reason why I quit drinking. I'm really always thankful to my anxiety, because it was really my body screaming out for help. And I walked into the lounge that day and said to my husband, I can't do this anymore. I'm failing at moderation. I can't stop drinking, and I want to. I go out and have one and I end up drinking the bar dry. There is something wrong with me and I need somebody else to step in.
Mm. How did you know? Well, how did you know that time would be the last time? Because I'm sure you had many last times.
I didn't. I walked
really?
into a therapist and I said, I want to know a better way of drinking so that I don't get hungover. Yeah. She was like, I'm not sure. I was thinking you'd be like,
through the book here. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. I thought she was going to say beer, water between beers, or fish on a Friday, or come up with some really good way that I could just carry on being the only person I knew, because the other option was just too confronting. Yeah.
So you decided you were going to give up and then straight to a therapist?
Straight to a therapist that day.
Didn't try anything else? Didn't try any apps or podcasts or Alan Carr's book or...
No, I needed to speak to someone. I'd been to an AA meeting. My sister Louise is 26 years sober, and she took me to an AA meeting many, many years ago. And even at that point, I didn't still feel that my problem was bad enough that I would stand up in front of a room full of people and go, hi, my name's Vic and I'm an alcoholic. I wasn't ready for that. I just felt like this sort of twatty binge drinker. And I didn't feel like I was bad enough to deserve that level of support in a room. And I remember going to that AA meeting when I was 25 and just thinking, this isn't for me, because I was obviously still in my romance of boozing back in that day. And I remember just thinking, I hope no one slags off my best mate. I hope no one says anything horrible about alcohol. I think I was out the door having a cigarette pretty quick when it got serious. And when I looked back, I thought, what am I going to do? That wasn't for me then either. I thought I still wanted to drink, quite honestly. So there was no way I was going to stand up in front of a group of people at an AA meeting and confess to my problem. I just wasn't ready.
Well, so I suppose it's like what we were talking about before about the lowest, the rock bottom of sort of alcoholics. It's the same thing with AA. If there's someone there that says, crashed my car, lost my license, lost my job, lost my family, suddenly you're like, well, I'm not
that bad.
I'm not like Gary.
Yeah. I think the uncomfortable feeling that I had at that AA meeting, it wasn't because I didn't resonate with what they said. It was because I did. And I was in my prime, my booze prime. I just wasn't ready to address the issue. It was too much. So I think that's why I shied away from it back then.
Well, what were some of the things that were said that cut you to the bone?
Oh, it was just because it wasn't so much what they said. It was that everybody in there was so warm and so normal. It was like a parents' committee meeting. I was expecting, dogs on strings and everyone looking a bit rough and having a rollie out the front. I was like, oh my God, this is like going into an accountant's office. Everybody was smartly dressed and they were all so normal, which of course, alcohol, it doesn't differentiate. Everybody is prone to overdrink. So that's what surprised me. I think that's what was confronting.
So then the therapy that you started, how many sessions? How long did you stick with that?
I did 12 sessions in the end. That was it, 12 weeks of kind of unravelling the reasons why I drank.
Yeah, and what did you learn?
I learnt that I had trauma, which I'd always brushed under the carpet. I never even considered that I had any trauma throughout my life. But once in therapy, it's like a a pack of cards. Like, she kind of spread my life out before me and asked me to pick out the bits that I wanted and the cards that I didn't like. And I could see there were times in my life where things had changed. There were transitional moments where I was sad and I hadn't really clocked into them because I was probably scared. And I thought it was just easier to go, oh, well, that happened. Things like that happen to everybody and that's okay. And they weren't massive things. That's one thing I learned in therapy was that, you know, trauma is very relative.
Yeah.
And I had, you know, some friends at school that never spoke to me again. And from that day on, I became a real people pleaser, which meant I not only wanted to make new friends, I wanted to keep them. And my biggest fear in my life was to lose people. So therefore, I had to keep entertaining them to the point where they stayed with me. And it was really clear that there was a turning point when I was about 14 where I sort of didn't care about myself anymore.
So the therapy thing was real beneficial for you?
Hugely.
Yeah,
I wouldn't be sober without doing that. Definitely not.
How can you say that?
Just because I didn't have the tools. I hadn't done the work. We call it the work on the podcast. You have to do some work to understand and unravel the reason why you overdrink. And there is always a reason. People think it might be social pressure or because they like it or because of all these other reasons. But I think there is more to it than that. There is a void that is being filled where you don't think your authentic self is enough. And that's definitely how I felt.
Yeah. And how was the reaction in those early months from your friends and stuff?
I didn't tell anybody.
You just didn't leave the house? No?
I didn't leave the house. For once, instead of blurting everything about me to everybody, which is what I generally do in my life, I thought this is too important. I'm actually going to keep this within my family. So I've got 3 kids. They didn't know they were too young, and my husband. And actually I went out and held on to an alcohol beer for 18 months, like it was sort of my lifeline back to who I was. And I never, ever took a sip. I was still too scared. I was still too awkward. I didn't want to go out into this world and shock everyone by not being the person that they thought I was. So I don't recommend doing that because, you know, you really isolate yourself, which was a silly thing to do. But I just couldn't face the world without my, you know, my best buddy booze.
And so your husband, does he still drink? Is he not?
No, he's given up.
Really? In solidarity or?
I think so. Well, I never asked him to because I don't believe you can tell people to stop drinking. I believe you have to lead by example if you want to be a real cycle breaker here. And I think he's just fed up of me waffling on about it, quite honestly.
Yeah. Well, was he much of a drinker anyway, or?
I would say he wasn't a problem drinker, whereas I was.
Yeah,
I mean, we knew each other from uni days many, many years ago, and we were massive boozers then. But I think he's one of those people that always had a level of control. Yeah, whereas I didn't.
And how long after giving up did you decide to lean into it publicly? I mean, you've got a fucking book now. You've got a very successful podcast.
Yeah.
When did you decide to do that?
I needed the accountability, I think.
Really?
Yeah, I think I've always been a bit of an oversharer, and when I sat down to write that book, it was literally on the day I gave up drinking, March the 10th, 2018. And I sat down in a room and I felt like I wasn't an extreme boozer. I wasn't perhaps an alcoholic. I'm someone that got stuck between the pub and an AA meeting, which is where a lot of people fall through the cracks because of that reason. They don't feel worthy of reaching out because it's not that bad. And I thought, well, if someone is feeling like I did, then, you know, there is someone out there who's going to resonate with what I have to say. So I sat down that day and thought, I'm going to write this story. I'm going to write this story of me giving up a very normal drinking habit, a socially acceptable binge drinking habit, and see if it resonates with anyone. And it turns out, like, I've made a career out of talking about my pissed up stories, which is quite good because I don't know anything else.
There's some quite good yarns. We'll get to that shortly. The book's quite recent, eh?
Yes, it came out in the end of February.
How is it like? You had like terrible like post-drinking anxiety towards the end of your drinking career. Did you have like book anxiety when that first came out? Like there's a lot of very confrontational stuff in there.
There so is, and also you are a writer too.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you know how that goes. It is quite exciting. You get so excited about the whole process, and then when it actually happens, it's kind of like a weird dream world, isn't it? Because I realise it's a bit like the podcast. You put this stuff out there, but you never really know whether people like it or people listening or people reading it. So it's been lovely to get some good reviews. I'm trying not to read them, but When there's a good one, I'll read it. Someone will send me a good one. I'm like, okay, I'll read that. But yeah, I don't get stuck into the bad ones.
Yeah, it must feel like, in a way, like sort of standing naked in a room where everyone, you know.
I've done that so many times, though.
Yeah, like it's you're leaving nothing, nothing off the page. How do you think your life would look now? So how many years is it? 5 years, 6 years?
6 years, no, 6.5 years sober.
If you didn't change anything, how would your life look now?
I just think I would be sort of lost up, sat at a bar in Thailand. I lived in Thailand for many years. I think my mental health may have deteriorated so much to the point where I might not be here, quite honestly. That's how it felt. That's how unwell alcohol made me. It made me feel like I couldn't control my thoughts anymore. That's what my anxiety was. I felt like I was going to die. The next day after drinking, it seems like such an extreme thing to go out for a pint and everyone be like, oh, isn't this fun? Yay. And then for me in bed the next day, I literally felt like I was dying. I would sit with my fingers on my pulse, thinking that my heart was almost going to explode out of my chest. That's how I reacted to booze. And it's crazy to think that I wouldn't have survived that, I don't think, if I hadn't stopped. So I'm lucky that happened to me.
Yeah, what do you think, that would have eventually killed you, or you think suicide?
I think I would have not survived it in some way. I think I may have killed myself. I don't know. I'd never had suicide ideation while I was alive, like when that was happening, but I do think I couldn't have coped with that level of mental breakdown for a long time. Definitely not.
Yeah, I don't know if this is a thing in Australia or the UK, but here that's often called Hangxiety.
Yeah, Hangxiety.
Yeah, is that a thing? Yeah. Was Hangxiety just something that sort of crept into your life towards the end of your drinking career, or was it always there?
I think I'd always had it to a certain level. I definitely suffered with hangovers more than everybody else, probably because I was drinking more. I was kind of smoking cigarettes as well, probably. It's something that just got worse, much, much worse after having children, because, of course, I used to wake up not knowing what I'd done. You know, I'd be in a blackout. I call it the fear of the unknown. And that's a frightening place to be, like checking my body, seeing if I'm okay, knowing that I'd probably abandoned myself, abandoned my body the night before. It was quite frightening to wake up not knowing what I'd done. And to know that I possibly had to work the next day as well. So I'm not only dealing with the anxiety in the moment, I'm dealing with not being able to remember the night before and having to function in the week that comes after the hangover. So there's just so much going on there. It was so much trauma and stress just from one night out.
Yeah. And it seems like you're quite a big hangover vomiter. Like a morning vomiter, but you're also an evening vomiter, or?
I was a massive evening vomiter.
Are you vomiting all over the place?
Well, it's just because I think I was poisoning myself. And then I'd go and do take one for the team. I'll go and be sick and I'll get back on it.
Oh, a tactical. We call that a tactical.
Tactical, yes. I was a good tactical vommer. I'm not proud of it. That's what I mean. Like, I'm happy to tell you that because it's like, what was that person doing? Like, she was completely off her nut.
Yeah. Well, it seems like you're in a really good place now.
Yeah.
It's bloody great. I saw an interview, it may have been on Diary of a CEO, with Steve-O. You know Steve-O from Jackass?
Love him.
Yeah, and he's had massive issues over the years with alcohol and drugs. And he had a really good way of putting it. I've never heard it framed this way before. But he said, any disease you have, like, say, cancer or whatever, all you want is to get back to your old self again. Yep. And he said, alcohol and drugs, it's the only disease in the world where once you knock it on the head, your life is going to be better than what it was beforehand. Yeah,
and it can sound quite preachy when you're talking about sobriety, but it's only because people who really give it a go experience so many benefits. Like, it's so life-changing in every aspect. It can be confronting, because you have to probably not go out as much. And I made a choice very early on to swap my nights for days and to fulfill my social needs at breakfast or lunch or maybe an early dinner, and to have my evenings with my family. Little changes like that made massive impact on my mental health because I could look forward to stuff for the first time. When I was a massive drinker, I had become so anxious to the point where I dreaded going out. I knew I had to, but I also knew that I wasn't going to be able to control my drinking, would be the drunkest person in the room, which led to anxiety. So basically, I didn't trust myself around alcohol, which is very, very weird to say that you can't trust yourself. And that's something that sobriety, the most wonderful gift, is that I trust myself now. And I feel sad for that person that didn't trust herself. It is quite a heartbreaking thought to think that I didn't have my own back. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. That's really sad. Did you have to lose any of your friends, or are you lucky enough to be in an age and stage of life where, oh, 'cause I'm just trying to think back to my 20s. I had the same group of maybe 8 or 9 guys, and we do the same thing every Thursday, Friday, Saturday night. When you get a bit older, it's a bit different, isn't it? Life's a bit different.
Yeah, I suppose when you've got kids, like you're so busy and doing all the kid stuff that you don't notice your social life sort of being flushed down the toilet as much. But definitely some people have fallen by the wayside since I got sober, which because also now I don't really care what people think about me, which is another wonderful side effect. Like if you don't want to be my mate anymore, brilliant. It means that I don't have the hassle of trying to stay in contact with you, or, I don't mind it. If people don't like me who I am now and preferred that person that was really, really unwell, when that kind of shows their colours, really.
Well, it means you're sort of being used as a foil for their entertainment, really.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Did you reach that point of not giving a fuck about what people care about you through, do you think that was through the therapy or the sobriety, or is it just the whole package?
I think it's all of it, and I think it takes time. Like for the first few years of sobriety, you're sort of white-knuckling it, just trying not to drink and, listening to the podcasts and reading the books and trying to work out what life's going to be like. And then I think a few years in, it sounds super woo-woo and cheesy, which isn't me at all, but you start on this past the bucket journey of the self, which I never knew. I thought giving up drinking was just about giving up drinking, not taking a sip out of a bottle or whatever. It's not about that at all. It's actually about me becoming who I always was, learning who I was before alcohol came along and liking who comes after it. So it's all of it's about self-love.
You use the term white knuckling, but you can't have been you had those periods of 9 months during your pregnancy where you went without a drink just fine. It seems like you could have weeknights without it.
Yeah.
How were you white knuckling?
I would say I was white knuckling because I was learning so much about myself. Not so much I was desperate for a drink. I would say I was just trying to get on with this sober thing and trying to get through and have 3 kids and trying to learn what a craving was and how to get over it. It wasn't maybe so much white knuckling. That does sound a bit extreme. But I was just navigating and finding it difficult in the first year, I would say, trying to work out what this was all about and was it possibly for me even? Like, could I do this? But also, I will say, very early on, I think the day after I finished therapy, a lot of people come out of there and go, oh my gosh, this is going to be awful. But my drinking and my mental health had deteriorated so much that actually the day I decided I didn't ever have to drink again was like, oh, what a relief. It was like the best feeling in the world. So yeah, white knuckling might be a bit of a strong term, but definitely the first year is more difficult than the following 5.
Yeah, right. And how long was it before you just stopped thinking about it? Since it became like a non-issue in your life?
I think after probably 2 years, it becomes easier to be with it.
Easier, 2 years.
I know.
Fuck.
I know, it's a long time. It's a massive process. I mean, I was someone else for 30, 40 years of my life. So I'm 47 now. So 40 years, my brain is so wired to go, oh, I'm tired. Oh, I'm angry. Oh, I feel like shit. Drink, drink, drink. Any emotion. It was celebrations, commiserations, anything that was happening in my life, that was the answer. So to recalibrate my brain and to rewire it, all that neuroplasticity or whatever it's called, I had to squish it into shape. And that was really, really hard. And that's why people relapse, because it is hard. It takes time and it takes effort and it takes all sorts of different tools like podcasts and going for walks every day and having your sober mates and all of this other stuff. It's like this massive package which can feel like a lot for anyone to take on.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about this book of yours.
Yes.
So there was an Instagram post in May. Was it a cute photo of your dad?
Oh, yeah, my dad.
The caption was, probably a huge mistake. I'm letting my 86-year-old dad read my book. I wrote Skip on the pill-popping chapter and International Sex Machine. Oh, your face palm already.
God.
International Sex Machine. I'm not sure if he will speak to me again. My last words were, don't judge me, I was pissed.
Yeah.
So I got the book on Audible because I knew you were coming in. I didn't have a time to order it. What was the pill popping chapter? I couldn't.
Oh, that was my ecstasy days.
Right.
Yeah, there's all sorts of different. There was a cult. There's a tsunami as well. The pill popping chapter was my overdose. I was somebody that wanted to take it to the next level with drugs as well, of course, because I just wanted to be in oblivion most of the time. And
just wanted to feel good, but you didn't realise you were feeling bad and hiding something.
100%. I think you hit the nail on the head. I didn't know that I was doing that because I was feeling sad. I was feeling very, very sad about the loss of friendships and all this other stuff that had gone on. So I didn't know that I was filling that void. So I just went harder and faster than anybody else. So, I would buy a pack of tennies rather than just taking a half like my mates were doing. And I had a drug overdose, and I just didn't feel like my dad needed to hear about that. He's heard a lot. He had to pick me up when I got arrested for drink driving, which is like one of my biggest regrets of my life. But so he knows. But I think now at 86, there's some things that he just doesn't need to know, especially about his daughter's sex life. Me sleeping with a Romanian guy who had wooden teeth is something that my dad just doesn't need in his brain.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, no, that is the first chapter I skipped to, the international sex machine one.
Okay, excellent, yeah.
Okay, these are just some of the bizarre encounters from the book. The French guy who licked your face, elaborate.
Oh, yes. There was a beautiful Frenchman in Bangkok one night, who greeted me by licking my face. I was like, oh, he's nice. I'll spend a night with him. But that was it. People didn't have to do too much to make me interested. As long as they liked me, I would reciprocate. Yeah. Because I had low self-worth. All you had to do was do something slightly quirky or peculiar, and I'd be like, oh, he's nice. I'll go out with him for a year.
So you think now with the benefit of hindsight and therapy and deep work that, you just wanted sort of validation in a way, really.
Absolutely. Really, it's a love story. I was looking for love everywhere, in most ports.
Seems like you were finding it, too.
I did find it in very short-term ways, yeah.
Yeah. The guy that called you Christina?
Oh, God, he was madly in love with me. He was my boyfriend for 5 years. And he turned around to me once and said, yes, I love you, Christina. I said, I'm Vic. I've been going out with you for 3 years.
Yeah, really?
I did.
That's a joke.
No, I did find out he had a Swedish girlfriend. He was a Thai guy, and he had a Swedish girl called Christina sending him money every week, which I didn't know about.
Oh, so it was like a Freudian slip.
Yeah.
Yeah. The dude on the top bunk in a dorm room in Spain?
Oh, yeah, that wasn't very nice. Flapping around like a fish. Yeah.
Were there other people in the dorm?
Yes. It's not funny, though, is it?
How old were you then?
Oh, probably 20, 22 maybe.
Yeah. I don't know. I see, I feel like you can get away with it at that age.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
But the thing is, I was in a blackout. It wasn't like I can remember certain aspects of things, like flashes of memories of my behaviours. But then a lot of it is kind of misty. Like I can't see through to that person. I want to kind of like break the clouds apart and go, what are you doing? Like, why are you doing this? Why are you taking it to the biggest extreme out of all your friends? Why do you feel the need to prove yourself? Because that's what it was. I was just trying to come up with a good story down the pub the next day. We'd meet up for a roast dinner, have a Bloody Mary, get a few drinks in. And I wanted to be that person that could go, here is my stupid story. This is the crazy shit that happened last night, and make a room full of people laugh. I think really it was coming from a good place. I was so wanting to make other people happy, so much so that I forgot that I mattered. Yeah.
And shit, you accumulated a lot of stories.
I did.
And it would have been even okay if back then you were thinking, you know what, I'm gonna get sober in a few years and write a book about this. But that wasn't the goal at the time, tragically.
Well, funnily enough, as part of our live show we do, I read some of my diaries out from that time. And I do say the word sober in there because it's one day drunk, one day hungover, next day wanting to be sober, next day drunk. It's like this kind of constant pattern. And I was really surprised looking back at many, 25 years ago in my heyday, the word sober was popping up. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's how you can recall a lot of the stuff because you've been a regular diary keeper.
Yeah, I've got loads of diaries, massive ones. My time in New Zealand when I was backpacking, I've got about 5 diaries that are this thick. Hamish, my co-host, comes with his little book, and mine are like these huge diaries, like of everything that I did. Yeah, I used to love keeping a diary. I was always a writer.
To what sort of degree? Like bullet points or no, like full.
Well, mostly it's exactly what I said. Like, it's tonight I'm getting drunk, this is who I've met and this is who I've slept with, and then this is how I feel the next day. And it was every single page was like a different story and a different tragedy. It was chaos, quite honestly, to read back on those and think that I thought that was okay. Frightening.
Yeah.
My dad is not listening to this podcast, I can tell you that.
Yeah, has your dad said anything about the book?
He phoned me up the other day. He's gone to England. He's read it on the plane. And he said, I did skip the chapters you asked me to. And I thoroughly enjoyed the tsunami chapter. He said, it's a masterpiece, Victoria. So my parents are still drinkers. They always have been, always will be. And there is a chapter in there which is confronting about them. There's an element of blame, of course, because, you know, I grew up in a household where it was the life and soul of the street. In the book, I describe it as our house was on a dark street, was the sort of glimmering glitter ball.
Yeah, your mum would have balloons out front.
Yeah, it was the party house.
What's the chapter that's confronting about your parents?
Well, it's just that I had to say, look, I'm not sure that I would have been a massive drinker like I am if I'd had a choice about it. I don't necessarily feel like I had a choice about alcohol. It has been coming for me since the day I was born, and whether that was growing up in my house, whether it was the culture, whether it was my environment, whether it was living in England and there was a pub at the end of every street, I feel like, and I think many people feel like this, is that alcohol's just been coming for me and I haven't been able to avoid it. So in the book, I had to talk about these things. You know, in my recovery, I had to say, these are the elements that made me who I am. And it's all of these things. And my parents were included in that. And I said, look, I knew that blaming them was futile because it was going to hurt the hearts of people that I loved. So I decided very early on, and it was very clear when I wrote that chapter, actually, that it wasn't any of, it wasn't any of those things. I had a visualization of my hand coming out from my body. This is me reaching out for a drink. This is my hand reaching into the fridge for a bottle of wine. It's my hand waving a tenner at the barman on a Friday night. This hand is coming from my body. So therefore, it is my responsibility to stop this. Yeah,
it's interesting, eh? The level of accountability to put on your parents or your surroundings. Because while listening to that part of your book, it made me reflect on my own. And we'd go and visit my nana and granddad's most weekend. And granddad had a bar downstairs in the basement. And mum and my nana, they'd be upstairs with the women, and the guys would go downstairs, and us kids would be downstairs. And it was an honour if you got to like pour a beer for your dad or uncle.
Yeah.
And then I didn't realise it was the bad part of the beer, but we got to drink the froth.
Classic. How old?
Oh, I don't know, 7, 8, 6, 7, 8, as kids. So alcohol was always just like an undercurrent in that sort of environment growing up. And so part of me thinks, maybe I was drawn to drinking because I saw it as a rite of passage and part of being an adult. But then now I'm at an age where some of my mates have got like kids that are 18, 19, 20, and they just have no interest in alcohol at all. And yet they had the similar sort of thing, where alcohol was just in the house all the time. But maybe that's just more of a society thing now with this Gen Z or whatever the fuck they're called.
Yeah, Gen Z, I think that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there is changing. I think they have exposure to more information now. So whether it's on Instagram or whatever they're watching, because they're watching so many screens all the time, I think they have exposure to the impacts that it has. And they're kind of more aware of their emotions nowadays. They're more aware of themselves and their safety. I know me and my friends, when we used to go out, we didn't give a shit what happened to us. Like, the more injured we got and the more people that we slept with, the funnier it was. Whereas now, it's kind of, people are a bit more caring about themselves and about their well-being. And whether that's exposure from media, I'm not sure. But I do feel like things are changing a little bit in that front.
Yeah, maybe, I don't know, maybe part of it with the generation coming through is also just their awareness of how troubling social media can be.
Yeah.
I took my mum to Boston last April for the marathon, and we went into like a cannabis dispensary.
Right.
And it was like an Apple store.
Yeah.
Mum was filming it on her phone. She put it on Facebook just as a novelty sort of thing. My sister said to her, "Oh, Mum, you need to be more careful about your social footprint."
Oh, right.
Mum's in her fucking 70s, like
She doesn't care about her
she's
social
out of the woods. Yeah, but it's interesting. Yeah, but maybe if you're 18 to 24 at the moment, maybe that's like a priority about how this is going to look if someone sees this and it ends up on LinkedIn or
Well, of course, if somebody sees you when you're out, people can take footage of you, and it's quite frightening, isn't it? Yeah, I'm glad that didn't happen when I was in my
100%,
20s. Yeah.
100%. Do you want to talk about your finger or lack thereof?
Yeah, so that is one of my drinking injuries. That is my classic drinking injury, which I always thought was the funniest thing ever. Whereas now I'm like, oh my God, I really was off my tits.
But this is the millennium, right? 1999.
It was the Millennium Night. Yeah, it's the Millennium Stump.
A fireworks display in
Thailand, in Koh Phangan. It wasn't a display. It was me lighting a firework that was in my pocket at 3:00 in the morning after being blackout drunk, having found a bottle of cold red wine in a bar somewhere and rolling around on the beach like a chicken schnitzel, and then walking home and lighting a small firework in my hand and blowing my own finger off. Yeah.
So that was 25 years ago. So you were how old then?
I was 23.
23, yeah.
Yeah.
And did you get hospital treatment or you just like tape it up?
I was taken on a one of those kind of back of a truck where I was passing out and saying, I'll never play the piano again, and then passing out again.
Were you a pianist?
I just thought the whole thing was hilarious. I thought this is going to be a good story the next day. And I got to the hospital and it was like something out of MASH. And there was kind of like syringes in buckets. And I was just like, oh gosh. And eventually I flew to Australia where I was supposed to be doing my year work visa and had all like work done on it and skin grafts and all sorts of things. But I was kind of just winging it. I remember phoning my parents and I lied on the insurance forms and said that somebody had thrown a firework at me because I thought maybe I'd get some money, but I didn't, unfortunately.
I mean, like you're in a really good place now. Like it sounds like you've got a great marriage and you've got kids and you've got this, it's amazing the twist and turn life brings, right? You've got a book and you've got this amazing podcast. But so when you look at your hand now, like do you sort of laugh with rose tinted glasses, or do you feel embarrassed or sad?
No, I don't feel embarrassed or sad. I love what happened to me. I love everything about it. I wouldn't have a podcast if I didn't have these stories. That's the joy of it. Every single moment of my life has led me to here. I wouldn't respect who I am if I hadn't gone through something. I'd probably just be having a mundane job and not be very, happy. Whereas now I can look back, I feel like I've had twists and turns, and they've what made me. Every step of the way led me to here. And I couldn't be more thankful for the journey, as it were. Yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't make it, you're more... Did you just flip me half?
Yeah, it goes up the nose. It's good at kids' parties. Yeah. It has its benefits.
Oh, yeah, so that's the bird thing.
It's the half of the bird.
Oh, that is pathetic.
Yeah, my friends call me the clock because I've got one hand smaller than the other.
Yeah. Oh,
I do get 10% off when I get my nails done, though.
Oh, so you should as well. What was the incident where you ended up in jail for the night?
Yes, that was a drink driving incident when I was about 18. Terrible it was. I can't believe I did that. But that's just proof again of how I was always more extreme than anybody else. I was working in a pub at the time. My car was parked where it shouldn't have been, and I moved my car when I was quite heavily under the influence. And I just remember the blue lights straight away. I hadn't driven anywhere. I was literally moving it up the road. No excuses. And actually, that was another good thing that happened because it was so humiliating. I had to breathe into a breathalyzer. I had to go to court. I had to plead guilty in front of, all of these people that I'd made such a stupid mistake. And I was embarrassed then back in that day. And I never, ever took a sip of alcohol and drove ever again, I'm pleased to say. So sometimes there were red flags that I kind of tuned into. It didn't stop me drinking. It didn't stop me taking drugs and promiscuity and all that stuff. But I think it maybe escalated those things because I was just numbing out the fact that I'd done some really stupid things in my life.
Yeah, did that cause like a huge amount of shame for your family or personal shame?
No, not at all. It was kind of a funny story. Oh, Vic got done for drink driving. It's kind of a par for the core. Is that the word? It was just like one of those things that added to our repertoire, like another crazy story. Thank God I didn't hurt anyone, I look back on that as one situation I look back on and go, God, I got away with that. I'm so thankful for that.
Yeah. There's also a story about your husband showering you after spewing in a taxi.
Yeah, you've all got the good ones, haven't you?
Yeah. Are they the good ones? Yeah, I'm wondering. That's the last one I've got. Oh, we could talk
Damn
about
it!
This. We're at the ski instructor with the huge dick. How huge?
Yeah, that was frightening.
Like, girthy or long or both?
Girthy and long, down to his knee.
So you end up running away?
I ran away. I thought it was a snake.
And he's a ski instructor as well.
I know, it's a shame, I know.
Right.
There is more to it than knob stories in my book, but there are quite a few.
This is just all from one chapter.
That is just one chapter.
It's a hell of a body count.
The lady that edited my book, she's so funny. I always say to her, it's not fucking Shakespeare, all right? She said, oh, but Vic, you've got a turd trifecta. I was like, what's that? She said, you've got the word turd in 3 times. I'm like, oh, yes, that's the sort of quality writing that we want.
What was the context of
I can't remember.
Yes, you can.
I've had quite a few turd confrontations in my time. It could be one of many.
Yeah. So your husband sharing you after a taxi.
Yes.
So I mean, that seems like pretty drastic.
Yeah.
Right. It's a pretty drastic thing to do to someone you love. So so he was a drinker as well.
Yeah.
He's given up now, as you mentioned, but he obviously didn't have the same unhealthy relationship to alcohol as what you had. Mm-hmm. Does he see anything, or like the next day or the following weeks?
There was an unnamed melancholy between us the next day after that, I would like to describe it as.
What does that mean?
It means that there was a sadness that we didn't talk about.
Oh, okay.
There was something hanging in the air that felt very, very uncomfortable because I had panic ripping through me like wildfire in bed the next day, not able to take care of my newborn. And that was kind of one of the last times I drank, actually. And he used to have to come in, and I would go from being this life and soul of the party that he knew to being this sort of person lying in bed, fragile, not sure what she'd done, scared for her life. And he's the one that sort of crackled open the packet of paracetamol to me and was like, are you all right? I'd be like, I'm not all right. I'm having really bad anxiety and I feel like I'm going to die. But the one thing that my husband never did was tell me what to do. I don't think I would have listened. He showed his concern in other ways, which may have been like a cuddle or just a glass of water next to the bedside table, because he knew I was going to be hungover. But telling me was never going to work. I had to work it out for myself. But I could sense every time that I drank, I was letting him down, because I used to have to listen to my life going on without me. I'd be in bed, not able to move my head because I'd drunk too many tequila shots, whilst I could hear my little baby's, jacket being zipped up and them heading to the park without me. And I knew that I'd become sort of a bystander in my own life. And that was really, really hard and confronting, which is why I had to address the problem. I don't know if I hadn't had kids, I would have never had a consequence to my drinking. That's why I wonder whether I would have just carried on. They were my reason why. Their little faces looking up at me, needing me, and not being able to be there had to be, and still is now, the reason why I stay sober.
Yeah. What do you miss about it, if anything?
Oh, I don't miss anything.
Yeah.
I don't miss anything. I love genuine conversations like we're having now. I love my genuine smile. I love being authentic with people. I love being able to leave and having boundaries. And one of my favourite things is waking up with a steady heartbeat. I used to come to when I was a drinker. I used to sort of wake up with that palpitations going on. What have I done? Where have I been? Who am I with? And I'd wake up in this sort of shocked state. Whereas when I became sober after a few years, I realised I'm just waking and there is a really soft heartbeat going on and it's pure contentment because I've got nothing to worry about. I do still have the odd drinking dream, which is quite awful because I'm literally like way back in there snorting coke off a DJ's turntable, like on the dance floor. So occasionally I get those, but I try and get the good bit out of those and go, well, at least I got to experience that again and not deal with the dusty head the next day.
Yeah, you got some great war stories. Yeah. That's brilliant. You don't miss the... Because I've thought about this with my own experience. I think what I would miss... Sometimes now if I'm getting ready for a night out, it's the anticipation. And then when I'm out and I'm drinking, I'm actually not having a very good time. Yeah. It seems fucking boring and lame.
Yeah.
Do you miss the expectation or the...
I can still get that.
Yeah.
I can still look forward to something and I even look forward to it more because I know that nothing awful is going to happen. I can just look forward without a hangover and knowing that I'm going to be completely compos mentis the next day and just get on with my Sunday. I'm so thankful and grateful that I don't have those 1,000 wasted Sundays anymore, that any sort of memories of drinking or any feelings. I mean, occasionally, if I've had a really long day, the kids are being twats and I'm finding life generally hard. If somebody was to walk by me with a really cold beer, that was like my favourite thing would be to have a cold beer. I would think I wouldn't mind whacking that down my neck. It's really fleeting. and I recognise it. But that's just because my brain is wired to think that, and I can sit with it for a second and go, oh, I remember you. I remember that person that used to... That was the problem. I wasn't thinking, oh, I'd like to take that off the tray and have a lovely little sip. I'd be like, I want to grab that and throw it down my face.
Yeah, and lady with the tray, don't go too far.
Come back. Yeah.
So what do you do now to sort of please that reward centre part of your brain or whatever? So you know when you're... this calls for a celebration. What do you reach for?
A lint ball sometimes.
A what?
A lint ball, those chocolate balls.
Bougie chocolate.
Yeah, I do like a lint ball. But yeah, then you have to give up sugar, of course, because then that becomes a whole other addiction. I can have an alcohol-free beer now. I quite enjoy one of those, like on a night out, just to stop people asking me questions sometimes. And I always like to have the thought of a holiday booked. That's something I can look forward to. But in the short term, I just look forward to being my genuine self in a social situation. Like, I look forward to going out now, which is lovely. I just look forward to eating good food and being with friends. We had Lee Mack, the comedian, on the podcast a few months ago, and he made a really interesting point about this. He said alcohol gets all the credit for a night out. He's like, you go out and you go, the next day, didn't we have a brilliant time? Everybody was pissed and we bonded and there was all this camaraderie. Wasn't it fantastic? And then now he goes out sober like I do. And we realise that it was booze getting the credit for the night out, because I still have those nights out. I went to the Ministry of Sound gig. I've been to the Chemical Brothers. I will dance all night with a big grin on my face without any drug or alcohol in me. So alcohol was always getting the credit. And actually it's not the drug. It's your mates, it's the ambience, it's the music, it's having these nice conversations, and it's the much more simple things in life that I appreciate now. And alcohol doesn't get any credit at all.
Yeah, but how do you stay out late if you're sober and everyone's getting drunk around you? Drunk people are fucking annoying if you're not on the same wavelength.
If everyone's hammered, then there is a point where you're like, right, I can't do this anymore. I'm
done.
out.
I don't need any more spit in the corner of my eye.
Yeah, and that's why we always say never be the designated driver as a sober person, because otherwise you have to end up waiting for those people.
Last man standing,
Yeah, last man standing. You don't want to be there for that. But I usually just leave early. Like, I have boundaries now. I don't need to stay. I've got nothing to prove to anyone. What have I got to prove? That I can drink a pint of snake biting black faster than anyone else in Luton. I had the university record when I was it's like a pint of cider with beer and blackcurrant juice. But I don't have anything to prove to anyone, so why would I stay out? Because it's not going to make any difference. I just know, well, when I feel tired, I'm going to go home. I've had enough. So I don't feel the need to appease the opinions or the choices of others anymore. And that's something that's huge to me as a people pleaser.
Yeah, and now you're in New Zealand doing a live show. That's what brought you here. A friend of mine, Karina, who's on the sober journey herself. I think she's like 2 years.
Nearly, yeah, I think she's 18 months, yeah.
Yeah. So she's doing really good, and she's found your podcast like a huge help, as I'm sure she told you on the ride-in from the airport.
Yeah.
So what do these shows look like, these live shows that you do?
So we do a live show of the podcast.
Yeah.
We specify sober socializing because we totally believe that's why people... in this level of being sober curious, that's why people don't give up alcohol and why they start again is because of their social life and being so scared of who this person is within. And so we focus on that, but it's basically a live episode where we introduce the topic and we try and do it in an alcohol-free environment. And we usually get a sponsor on board. We've got Seedlip this time, so an alcohol-free drinks company, and everyone just comes into a room and there's generally a lot of humour, a lot of stories. Sometimes people from the audience share some of their drinking stories. Hamish and I read from our diaries and we just have a laugh. It's just a lovely evening. Yeah.
God, those diaries that you kept, it was like past you was looking after current you in a way, wasn't it?
100%. That's a lovely way of looking at it. Yeah, it was. And I still respect that girl, you know. She was lost and she was sad, and I feel closer to her now. Part of therapy is doing that inner child work where you connect with that person from your youth and you try and understand them a bit more. And now I definitely have more of an understanding of who she was and why she did the things she did. And it gives me a sort of peace and contentment that I've kind of made amends with her.
Would you change anything?
Nothing. Maybe the drink driving thing. Maybe that guy
turning
on
away
the
the
bunk
ski
bed.
instructor with the massive dick.
Yeah, maybe the bunk beds guy. There's a few of those that definitely wouldn't have been as satisfied as they were. When I wrote this book, I never imagined in a million years when I sat in my son's bedroom and wrote this book that anyone would ever read it, which is why all of those awful stories in there, because I was writing it for me. There's no way I thought I'd get a publishing deal and somebody would put it out there. So, yeah, it's quite confronting that people know things like that. I have to exit it from my brain.
It's cool, though. You must look at this work with a sense of pride, like given where you are now, and think, fuck, that's a long journey.
Yeah. I'm not sure some people I know feel the same about it because they probably think I'm a bit of an oversharer. But at the same time, who cares? Everyone's done this shit, you know? Don't pretend that you haven't. Everybody's done this shit. Everybody's done crazy stuff in their lives. We've all been down the seafront with a traffic cone on our head, naked on Byron Bay. You know, we've all done it. So I'm just saying, yeah, I did it and now I tried something else and that's better. That's all I can do.
Not all of us have lost a finger in Bangkok.
My stories are quite extreme. It's funny, we always call Hamish, who I do the podcast with, we always call him like the normal drinker and like kind of no game Hame, who was a bit of a lightweight. But his stories are, I swear to you, they're as bad as mine. So he's always got something that he can push back at me with.
I feel like it's good, and if you're going to be the person that front foots it creates like an open space for vulnerability, doesn't it? It allows that vulnerability exchange to take place.
And I find that so healing, the vulnerability. You know,
cool.
We have a thing called the Shame Shared on the podcast where people write in their most terrible things that they've done when they're drinking. And it's like we share this communal blame and it makes things a lot easier. It's like you get away with this individual shame and have communal blame instead. And it lifts the weight off everybody. I do think there is something really deep and meaningful in telling your story in an honest, perhaps brutally honest way sometimes. The emails that I get are, I didn't know that there was somebody worse than me. And it makes people not feel so bad.
Yeah. All right. Well, Victoria Vanstone from the Sober Awkward podcast, award-winning.
Yeah.
And also the book 1000 Wasted Sundays, which it's on Audible. You can probably get it on Amazon as well for your Kindle. Yeah. Hey, congratulations on everything you've done. Congratulations on everything you're doing.
Yes.
And shame on you for some of the things you've done.
That's a great way to end. Thanks, Dom.